Hey everyone, Chris here, and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to talk to you about the books I read between February 2nd and February 8th. First up, I read Frostfire by Jamie Smith, and I gave this book 4 stars. In this book, we follow a young girl named Sabira, who is on her way to go and bond with one of the frost lovers, a fragment of the glacier that crusts her icy home. While on her journey, an avalanche happens and separates her from her guides high on the mountain, leaving her with no easy means of escape. She then must find a way to survive and make her way home, but unbeknownst to her, there are dangers lurking on the mountain that she never could have dreamed of. I really enjoyed this book. I liked getting to know Sabira and seeing how frost livers worked and kind of discovering that with her, because until you have one of your own, you don't really understand how they work. I liked the survival aspect of it and how dangerous it felt and how she managed to discover the different dangers, again, some that she never expected to come across. All in all, I thought this was a really interesting book. Like I said, I liked the magic, and I liked some of the twists and turns that happened in this book, and I found it to be a very enjoyable read. Next up, I read What Goes Up by Wen Jane Baragray, and I gave this book 2 stars. In this book, we follow Robin, whose house tends to attract things to its roof. If something has the ability to land on it, it's probably landing on hers. When she finds out from NASA that a satellite is going to be crashing to Earth, she's completely convinced that it is going to land on her house. This just intensifies her need to meet the father that has never been in her life. Her mom refuses to talk about him, so Robin, with the help of her best friend Nickel, set out to discover who her dad is, because she thinks that he can help them stay safe from the satellite that's falling from the sky. I really did not like this book. I'm trying to figure out how to explain what I didn't like about it without getting into spoilers, and it's really hard. There was a lot of drama in this book that I felt was in there just for the sake of adding drama, and then at the end there was really no payoff for this drama. It's like we went through all of this drama and it was there just for drama's sake, and at the end there was no payoff, which made me feel like I spent a lot of wasted time reading this book. I did not find Robin to be a very likable character. I did not like the way she treated Nickel at all. There were some questionable things that happened with the treatment of her friend, and I really didn't like that. I really found a lot of things about this book to be highly unsatisfying, and it just was not an enjoyable read for me. Next up, I read Children of Virtue and Vengeance by Tomi and Demi, and I gave this book 3.5 stars. This is the second book in the Legacy of Orisha series. In the first book, we follow Sleigh. She lives in a world where magic was ripped away from her people, and this led to the death of her mother and other magi. The king ruthlessly killed them all, and since then life has not been good for her or her people. Sleigh has a chance to change that and bring magic back when Princess Amara, who is running from her family, shows up with the key to returning magic. Sleigh then must go on a quest to bring magic back while staying one step ahead of the crown prince, who wishes to get rid of magic for good. I enjoyed the sequel. I thought it could have been a little faster paced. Like, I think in some spots the pace was a bit slow for me. Other than that, I did quite enjoy it, and I'm still enjoying this series and this world. There was a character in this book that I really disliked, which the point of this character is to dislike them, so I thought that character was written quite well, and I thought they added an interesting little twist to the series. I'm still really enjoying this series in this world, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it wraps up. I think it's a trilogy, or if not, just seeing where this story and these characters go next. Next up, I read The Alice Network by Kate Quinn, and since this is a 5-star prediction, I won't be telling you my rating. You'll have to wait for my 5-star prediction wrap-up for that. This is a dual timeline historical fiction. In one timeline, we follow Eve, who is a spy during World War I, and in the other timeline, we follow Charlie in the aftermath of World War II as she's searching for her cousin. I enjoyed Charlie's storyline more than I enjoyed Eve's. I think part of that is because I know far more about World War II than I do about World War I. So Eve's timeline was a little bit slower for me, whereas Charlie's since I already know so much about World War II, it is much easier for me to picture how things are in my head. Whereas with Eve's storyline, I kind of had to build it from the ground up. In Charlie's storyline, she has met up with Eve, and Eve is helping her look for her cousin, and I really enjoyed getting to see Charlie and Eve's relationship and how it grew and developed, and it was interesting to see the differences between Eve in the two timelines, and to kind of wonder how Eve got from being the person we met at the beginning of the timeline from her perspective to the woman that Charlie has met in her timeline. I really like Quinn's writing, and I will definitely be reading more by this author. Next up, I read Gargantus by Thomas Taylor, and I gave this book 4.5 stars. This is the second book in the Legends of Erie on Sea series. Like the first book, we're following a boy named Herbie who works in the Lost and Found at a hotel. In this book, a giant storm is brewing out at sea, and it might have some connection to an item that Herbie now has in his possession in the Lost and Found. Herbie then has to figure things out and see if there is a connection between this object and the storm that's brewing, and see if he can set things right before the storm takes out the whole town. I really love this series and Herbie and the characters that he gets to interact with. I thought that the mystery with what was going on with this item was quite interesting, and I liked seeing how Herbie had to figure things out and how the people of the town fought over this item, because it was left in Herbie's possession as it ended up in the hotel, and it was kind of up to Herbie to decide who had ownership over this item, and in the process, he realized the connection it had to the storm. I, again, love the illustrations. Like, I think they add so much to the story and really enhance my enjoyment of the read. The first book I listened to on audiobook, and I ended up getting a physical copy from the library just so I could look at the illustrations. And so when I picked up the second book, I knew I wanted to physically read it because I knew that the illustrations add so much to the story. I'm still really enjoying this world and these characters, and I will definitely be picking up any more books that are in this series. Next up, I read She Came to Sleigh by Erika Armstrong Dunbar, and I gave this book 5 stars. This is a biography of Harriet Tubman. I thought this was fascinating. I learned a lot of new information about Harriet Tubman that I didn't know before. I also forgot how much I love biographies. When I was in, I want to say 5th grade, I devoured biographies. I love learning in general, and I can remember, I think it was 5th grade, where I just really started to pick up biographies all the time. And I had kind of forgotten how much I enjoy biographies or autobiographies, and I thought this was really well done. I listened to the audiobook, and it was a really good listen, and I had no idea all of the things that Harriet Tubman managed to accomplish in her lifetime. So I thought this was a really fascinating story about her life, and I would definitely love to learn more about her. Next up, I read The Polar Bear Explorers Club by Alex Bell, and I gave this book 5 stars. In this book, we follow a girl named Stella who wants to join the Polar Bear Explorers Club, just like her adopted father. Unfortunately, girls are not allowed to join. Her father manages to convince the club to give her a chance to be a junior explorer, and so she gets to go on an expedition. Unfortunately, shortly after she and the crew set out, she and the other junior explorers get separated from the main group, and they have to kind of make their own way. I loved this book. I loved getting to see Stella and the other junior explorers and how their relationship developed. I love how determined Stella is to prove that just because she's a girl doesn't mean that she shouldn't be able to be a part of this club, and how determined she is not to let her adopted father down. I loved how they showed how important Stella and her dad are to each other, even though Stella isn't his biological daughter. She was found in the snow by her dad, and he took her in. I really love how this book shows their family dynamic, and I really, really loved getting to see, like I said, Stella and the other junior explorers' relationship develop through the quest they went on and the things they had to overcome on their quest. And I'm so glad I picked this up. this is my favorite book I've read so far this year, and I will definitely be reading more books in this series. Next, I read Across the Green Grass Fields by Seanan McGuire, and I gave this book 3.75 stars. This is the latest book in the Wayward Children series. In this series, kids find doors that lead them to other lands. All these lands are different, and each of the lands is suited to that particular child. This book is kind of a standalone in the series. Like, we don't see any of the worlds we've heard about in the other books or see any of the characters we've met in the other books, so you can really read this whenever you want in the series. In this book, we follow Reagan, who goes through a door with unicorns and centaurs and other magical equines. In this world, when a human appears, there's usually something big that's going to happen in this world, and the human usually ends up becoming a hero. Reagan is found by a group of centaurs and stays with them as she begins to learn about and explore this strange new world. I didn't like this as much as some of the other books in the series, and I think part of it is because it is like a complete standalone and we don't get to see any familiar faces, and I'm rather attached to some of those faces, so I kind of miss them in this book. And while I know the books are all short, this one being no exception, I felt this one was a bit rushed, and I just wanted more from it. Like, things just moved too quickly, and I wish we had gotten more details and that the story had been spread out a little bit. Overall, though, I did enjoy this book, and I'm glad I gave it a read, even if it's not my favorite in the series. And as long as Seanan McGuire keeps writing in this world, I will keep reading them because I love this series. Next up, I read The Yellow Bird Sings by Jennifer Rosner, and I gave this book 3.5 stars. This is a historical fiction set in World War II. In this, we follow Rosa, who is a Jew, and her 5-year-old daughter are hiding in a neighbor's barn. The daughter loves music, so it's very hard for her to be quiet, so her mom invents a story about a little girl who has to be quiet and has a bird that sings for her. As things get more dangerous, Rosa must make a very difficult decision. Does she keep her daughter with her, or does she send her daughter away to kind of give them both their best chance at survival? This book starts off with Rosa and her daughter already hidden, and I wish we had gotten to see some of their life before they went into hiding, because I think that would have made me more invested in their characters and their journey. I did enjoy that it gave us a look at what it must have been like for these two to be hidden, and I thought it did a good job of showing how her neighbors who were hiding her, like the risks they were taking and the fear they had that they would be discovered and what it would do to their family. I liked getting to see Rosa and her daughter's journey and both of their perspectives on things that were going on, because obviously her daughter had far less of a clue as to what the reality of their situation was. I think my biggest reason that I didn't rate this book higher was that I just wasn't as attached to the characters as I probably should have been. And I think, like I said, that could have been easily resolved with getting a little bit of time with them before they went into hiding to kind of see what they had given up and what was taken from them when the Nazis took over. Next up, I read The Mystery of Mrs. Christie by Marie Benedict, and I gave this book 4 stars. So in real life, Agatha Christie went missing for 11 days. No one has a clue what happened during those 11 days, as she never said. And so Marie Benedict decides to put forth one possible scenario of what could have happened during the 11 days that she was missing. This is told in 2 perspectives. So we have Agatha's perspective and we have Agatha's husband's perspective. The husband's perspective starts on the day that Agatha goes missing, and Agatha's perspective starts on the day she met her husband, obviously long before the man was her husband. I found the husband to be extremely unlikable, but I kind of think he was supposed to be. I really enjoyed getting to read Agatha's point of view and seeing how, she met her husband and how she fell in love and how she kind of became the Agatha Christie we all have heard of now, and how she, like her journey to being this prolific author. I wasn't a huge fan of the end, but the writing was really easy and it was a really quick read, and for the most part I enjoyed this book. But like I said, the husband was kind of unlikable, but again, I think he was supposed to be, so that isn't necessarily a bad thing. And again, this is based on a real life story. Like, she really did go missing and nobody knows what happened. So I thought it was an interesting idea for a novel, and I was intrigued even if I didn't necessarily love how the book ended. Next up, I read Upon a Burning Throne by Ashok K. Banker, and I gave this book 3.5 stars. So in this book, we have Audrey and Shfate, and as babies, they become the sole heirs to the Burning Empire. And in this kingdom, they must pass the test of sitting on the burning throne. If they are deemed worthy, they will not be harmed. Both boys pass the test. Then someone comes forward with a little girl claiming she is also the heir to the throne, and she's slightly older than the boys, and she too passes the test. The only problem with her is that she is the daughter of the demon lord Jarson, and he has been exiled, which, since he's been exiled, means his line is kind of disinherited, which means none of his descendants can take the throne. They are not allowed to become heirs. This makes Jarson very angry, and he declares that he will get revenge on the kingdom. So now, somehow, Audrey and Shfate must rule the kingdom with this threat hanging over their heads. To top it all off, Audrey is blind, and Shfate is an albino, and if he goes outside at any point when it's late, even when the sun is just coming up, his skin will start to burn and it'll hurt his eyes. So the kingdom and even their advisors are not sure how Audrey or Shfate is going to be capable of ruling their kingdom with these disabilities. That is kind of the basic gist about what this book is about. It is told in so many different perspectives, and it can be a bit confusing at times to keep the characters straight, but there is a character guide in the beginning of the book that is helpful. It is a lot of political maneuvering and intrigue, and like I said, lots of different points of view, so you're seeing so many different things happening, and obviously not all the characters have the knowledge that you have as the reader. And it is a big, chunky book. Despite all that, I still stayed interested throughout the whole thing, and I will admit this book is not going to be for everyone. Not everybody is going to like it, because like I said, there's a lot of politics going on, because you're seeing all sorts of different people, and like, I mean, you get stuff from Audrey's point of view, from Shfate's, from their grandmothers, from their like uncle, from their wives, because it goes from, like I said, it starts with them being babies, but it goes through like their adulthood, and you get to see Jarson's point of view even, and so there's just a lot going on in this book, and it's a lot to keep track of, but it kept my attention throughout the whole thing, and it left in a spot where I am really, really curious to see where the next book goes from here. And lastly, I read The Boston Girl by Anita Diamand, and I gave this book 4 stars. In this book, 85-year-old Addie tells her story of growing up in Boston in the early 1900s to her 22-year-old granddaughter. I really enjoyed getting to hear Addie's story. Like I said earlier with the Harriet Tubman biography that I read, I have been reminded how much I love biographies and autobiographies, and this is essentially a woman telling her story. So it is essentially an oral autobiography. So I really enjoyed getting to hear Addie's life story and how her life went. I thought it was quite interesting hearing her tell it to her granddaughter. Like, we never hear her granddaughter speak. Everything is from Addie's point of view, and I just thought that added quite the charming little twist on this story, is that she's sitting down and telling her granddaughter, and she'll say things like she'll reference somewhere and be like, do you remember the time we took you and your sister there? Like, and it makes it feel so much more personal. I just really enjoyed this story and found it to be quite an enjoyable read. So these are some of the books I've read recently. What are some of the books you've read recently? If you've made it this far in the video, leave me a key emoji in the comments section below. Like this video and subscribe to my channel, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye!